Hi, I'm Jordan Collins, and this is my audience. Imagine working every single day of your life with hardly any food and having the fear that you could die at any moment. What would your thoughts be as you are shoved in a room with no clothes on, thinking you were just taking a shower when gas comes out of the walls and kills you? People have lived through these scenarios while others have died because of this. This was known as a time in history as the Holocaust. It is important to learn about this time in history because millions of people died in many concentration camps spread throughout Germany and Poland. Throughout my years in school, the Holocaust was always a big topic in my history classes. I've also been super interested in this topic as well. Today we will take a look at 3 of the concentration camps in the Holocaust. Although there were more, these 3 were some of the worst and the biggest. The biggest and the worst camp under the Nazis was Auschwitz-Birkenau. Most prisoners arrived at the camp by train. These prisoners were crammed into small train cars and they could hardly move. And right here you can see all of the prisoners coming out of the tiny train cars. While the prisoners arrived at the camp, they were examined by Nazi doctors. These doctors would pick out those who would not be able to do the work that they needed. Older prisoners, pregnant women, children were all examples of these people who went straight to the gas chambers. Those who were passed by the doctors immediately got anything they were wearing or had with them taken away from them. Their hair was also shaved, no matter their gender. They got a tattoo of a number that was assigned to them. This number would be like their name in the camp. The officers gave each prisoner striped clothes, a hat, and clogs. Here is another picture of all the prisoners waiting to go into Auschwitz-Birkenau. One of the main reasons this camp was one of the worst was because of how many deaths happened at this camp. When the prisoners were passed by the doctors, they were then used for labor. They were worked very hard by the SS officers because it gave them a reason to kill them. They would kill them because they could no longer work. Once these prisoners were so weak and could no longer work anymore, they either died on their own or were sent to the gas chambers. Some were chosen to go to the gas chambers even if they were still able to work. This is a picture of a gas chamber right here, and you can see that all the walls were enclosed in and there was no windows. In these gas chambers, prisoners were sometimes told that they were going to be sent to shower, so they would remove their clothing and pile into the chamber. The gas would be released in the chamber by the SS officers and kill them instantly. Once all the bodies in the chamber were dead, the officers would burn the bodies and the smell of burnt flesh would spread across the whole camp. Here's a picture of a crematorium where they would burn all the bodies at. According to an article called Auschwitz, found on History.com, posted December 15, 2009, 1.1 to 1.5 million people died at Auschwitz, and the majority of them were Jews. Auschwitz was finally liberated in 1945. Once the Nazis were close to defeat, they started to destroy some of the evidence that was happening in Auschwitz. According to History.com, in an article called Auschwitz, published December 15, 2009, when the Soviet army entered Auschwitz on January 27th, they found approximately 7,606 or emancipated detainees who had been left behind barbed wire. The liberators also discovered mounds of corpses, hundreds of thousands of pieces of clothing and pairs of shoes, and 7 tons of human hair that had been shaved for detainees before liquidation. Now that we have talked about what horrible things went on Auschwitz and how it was liberated, let's talk about another concentration camp. Another concentration camp led by the Nazis was Buchenwald. Buchenwald was also one of the biggest concentration camps underneath the Nazis. Many prisoners were sent here after Kristallnacht, which would increase the population of prisoners at this camp. A lot of the same things happened to the prisoners that happened to the other prisoners in Auschwitz, including they all got their head shaves and each prisoner was given a tattoo. They all had the same clothing as well, like the striped pajamas, the clogs, and the hats. There were no gas chambers present at Buchenwald, but many people were still killed at this camp. According to History.com, in an article called "The U.S. Army Liberates Buchenwald Concentration Camps" posted on November 5, 2009, the camp held thousands of prisoners, mostly slave laborers. There were no gas chambers, but hundreds, sometimes thousands, died monthly from disease, malnutrition, beatings, and executions. Doctors performed medical experiments on inmates, testing the effects of viral infections and vaccines. There were even times when prisoners would die on a whim because an officer beating them. There was one specific officer who would sometimes keep the flesh of those who she beat and created items out of them. The American Third Army liberated Buchenwald. The American Army was a part of the war at this time, which helped them discover this camp. When they arrived at the camp, they found the worn-out, skinny prisoners along the fences trying to live. Right here you can see this is what they would see when they first discovered the camp, and here is the U.S. Army liberating the camp. Now that we have looked through both Auschwitz and Buchenwald, let's look at one more concentration camp during the Holocaust. The last concentration camp that we will talk about today is Dachau. Dachau was known to be the first concentration camp in the Holocaust. It started to be only a concentration camp, but quickly turned into a death camp. They created a gas chamber that they never ended up using, but the prisoners were still killed by hanging or any other form of death. Just like Auschwitz, the dead bodies were burnt. Many SS officers started their training at Dachau. This is a picture of when the officers would arrive and start their training. And because this concentration camp was the first one, many things were needed to be organized and keep the camps safe from people finding out. Officers would come to Dachau and start their training. Some would stay there and work, while others would move to other camps. U.S. Army also liberated Dachau. According to History.com, in an article called U.S. Army Liberates Dachau Concentration Camp, published on February 9, 2010, as they neared the camp, the Americans found more than 30 railroad cars filled with bodies in various states of decomposition. Inside the camp, there were more bodies and 30,000 survivors, most severely emancipated. This is another awful sight for the American soldiers to see. Here is a picture of the soldiers coming up to the prisoners and trying to help them, and this is when they were finally liberating the camp. In conclusion, we have learned about 3 camps that were a part of the Holocaust: Auschwitz-Birkenau, Buchenwald, and Dachau. It is important to know about these camps and how people were treated within these camps. Whenever you are feeling ungrateful, just remember you are not striving to live another day or hoping you weren't selected to go to the gas chamber. Times may have been tough, but millions of people died and watched their loved ones struggle throughout this time.